Headed to SoFi Stadium? Skip the traffic and ride the Culver City Bus Line 99, the SoFi Express, your direct $2 base fare round-trip ride from the Culver City Transit Center at Westfield, Culver City. Buses run on weekend game days every 20 minutes starting 3 hours before kickoff, with return service beginning at the start of the third quarter. And guess what else? We're hiring. Join our team and help keep the community moving. Visit culvercitybus.com or call 310-253-6500 for info on your next ride to the game or maybe your next job.
Good afternoon. We're getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz at 5. Mottek On Money, we're live on the air. 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And, of course, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Mixed finished on Wall Street today after a volatile session. In fact, one of the quietest summers for the stock market in years. After this now, we're seeing a spurt of volatility. Wall Street's so-called fear index, the VIX index, the volatility index, shooting higher again today on concerns about a trade standoff between the U.S. and China. The volatility index spiked another 9% today. The overall stock market ended the day mixed on concerns about China upping the ante in its trade dispute with the U.S. Investors also taking in the latest earnings news from the big banking giants, as well as some comments from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell at an economic conference. The Dow coming in for a closing gain today of 203 points at 46,271. Looks like Walmart hit an all-time high today. S&P 500 pulling back 10 at 6,644. And the NASDAQ sliding 173 at 22,522. Among the banking giants, the big dog, J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, and Wells Fargo in with third-quarter earnings that topped analyst expectations. J.P. Morgan Chase also announcing a new initiative to invest in critical industries for U.S. national security. China placing sanctions on 5 U.S.-linked units of a South Korean shipbuilding firm, effectively preventing Chinese companies from doing business with them. President Trump, in a Truth Social post late in the session, sent stocks moving lower from their earlier highs. The president accusing China of purposefully not buying U.S. soybeans and dubbed it an economically hostile act, threatening a cessation in U.S. cooking oil purchases. How about those beans? Also, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell gave a speech today at an economist annual meeting. In his speech, the Fed chair said the Fed's outlook for employment and inflation had not changed, implying that further Fed cuts are possible. Looks like the yield on the 10-year note is flirting with the 4%. Advanced Micro Devices providing Oracle's cloud business with 50,000 AI chips. The move by NVIDIA's chip-making rival, the latest in a recent series of AI deals. NVIDIA pulling back about 4% on the day. Closer to home, damage assessment continuing and nervousness continuing this afternoon on this storm that's moving through after rain brought flooding and some mudslides in the Southern California burn areas. We'll get an update on what's happening out there with meteorologist Rick Dickert. The day after the epic peace deal, which ended the Israel-Hamas war, was signed, relief efforts continue there. The next phases of the peace plan are being implemented. We'll get the latest on that from Lisa DAFTARI, Middle East expert and editor of the Foreign Desk. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works now. Joining us live, GABRIEL Wisdom, Managing Director of American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. GABRIEL Wisdom, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Frank. There was a very interesting headline on Yahoo Finance today. Absolutely a bubble on Wall Street. And the image is of a Wall Street floor trader chewing bubble gum and blowing a very large bubble at his lips that's about to pop. Bank of America chimes in. Other big banks chime in about concerns of overvaluation and even irrational exuberance. I heard that phrase again. But, without AI investments, our gross domestic product rate would have grown just a fraction of the 1.57% that it did grow, according to the research I saw. And so AI demand is leading the way. But the fly in the Chardonnay, as you like to say, is this trade deal, this trade disruption. severing any trade ties between China and the U.S. It could disrupt supply chains with China imposing these new restrictions on rare earth minerals that we need for making all the new technology that we depend on, cars, semiconductors, phones, you name it. So there's a lot of uncertainty again.
Right, and looks like some of those rare earth names have really popped lately. Looks like we might have missed some of these big moves, but what are your thoughts on some of those names that have been getting a lot of attention with these triple-digit percentage moves recently?
Well, they're risky because these are turnarounds. The government did jump in on MP Materials, symbol MP, and shares are up they're some 20+%. I believe since the government announced it would help out because we need to have some infrastructure in rare earth mineral mining, not just depend on China. China's been threatening to restrict exports for some time. The idea of rare in calling these rare earth minerals is a misnomer. They're not so rare. We've got deep supplies at the southern end of the Salton Sea, for example, just south of Palm Springs. So it's just a matter of whether we want to mine them domestically.
All right, we'll add not so to the rare earth metals label then, and we're watching these names. They ended up mixed today with all this attention after booking sharp gains yesterday. The president threatening China with 100% tariffs over China's strict export controls on these critical minerals, critical metals, up about 25%. USA rare earth down 6%. MP Materials down today about 1%. Energy Fuels down about 1%, and Neocorp Developments down about 6% on the day. We're also watching gold and silver make a run for new highs today, with silver above $50 an ounce here after blowing past the record high last seen back in 1980. That's certainly a big deal, and we see gold hovering close to $4,200 an ounce here. Give us your reaction to that big news this week.
You know, Frank, silver is now getting back to its 1980 highs. And since the 1970s, silver has actually gone through 3 massive boom and bust cycles. The boom these days has to do with its not so rare earth value in making solar panels, and you name it, pretty much. It's become a very valuable commodity, but it's not a store of value. For an asset to be a store of value, the central banks have to want it, and they don't want silver. They want gold, and that's that's moving gold higher. It's at an all-time high now, but there's been talk that there's maybe evidence that people are abandoning the dollar and dollar-based assets, and that's why all this money's flowing into gold. It's a debasement of our currency kind of alternative, but that the data doesn't show this. The U.S. dollar is floating near its 2015 and 2024 highs, and it's up very nicely these past 25 years, and the demand obviously for treasuries is strong because interest rates on treasuries are short-term treasuries are below 4%.
Right, that's the other big story, of course, in the bond market. The yield on the 10-year note is down to 4.03%. That's the one that we cite here all the time that impacts the fixed rate mortgage rates, but other bond yields have eased as well, benchmark yields. And we did hear from the Fed chairman today. Anything that caught your attention as to what might happen before the year is over as far as the direction of interest rates are concerned?
I thought the biggest tell, Frank, was when not just Powell, but Federal Reserve Bank of Boston President Susan Collins spoke, and she expressed support for more interest rate cuts this year. She did say that despite her view right now, she sees scenarios potentially where appropriate policy calls for holding rates steady later this year and into next would make a lot of sense if the inflationary pressures persist.
All right, we hit on analog gold. What about so-called digital gold? The cryptos have seen a wild ride in the last several days. On Friday, there was that washout and then bounce back over the weekend into the new week. Now we see Bitcoin back to just below 113,000. Ethereum is back above 4,000 after dipping below that on Friday, back to around 4,100. Doge at the moment at 20 cents. I know you keep an eye on all this now, too. Gabriel Wisdom, what are your thoughts on what's happening with the cryptos here now?
Well, Frank, you can't ignore crypto and digital and certainly blockchain assets in today's world. And crypto is also not a store of value because its price is not stable. You can't buy Bitcoin or Ethereum or any cryptocurrency and expect to sell it at the same price down the road. You just don't know. And along comes the stable coins, which is meant to be a fix for this. And now there's hundreds of crypto plays as a result, new IPOs, new exchange-traded funds. It's brought in tens of billions of dollars in fresh capital. It's quite exciting, but still a lot of volatility.
All right. Since the peace deal in the Middle East, we see oil hovering below $60 a barrel. That's certainly a relief. Not so much for us here in California, since it looks like gas prices have actually moved higher over the past year, despite the fact oil prices have eased over the past year. Certainly this year. Gabriel Wisdom, would you do anything with oil at this point, and what's the outlook there?
I would hold on to oil, and on any major breaks in support or price, I'd be buying oil and gas and traditional energy companies. The break even for oil and gas companies is $65 a barrel. So margins are thin, and which means they won't be making much more of it. And then today, Hamas published a video, or it might have happened last night, but they published a video on their official channel showing an execution of 8 blindfolded kneeling suspects. I mean, this isn't over in Gaza and the Middle East. I mean, we're hoping for the best, but I'd stay with oil.
All right, we're going to be speaking about the Middle East peace deal and how this is unfolding. Lisa DAFTARI will be joining us live later this hour, a Middle East expert. So on those important points that you just raised, Gabriel Wisdom will get her thoughts on that as well. But thank you for that assessment. And we see the bank stocks moving higher on the latest earnings news here. Any big takeaways from the other big news that we got right out of the box this morning?
Well, the Treasury is very focused on modernizing our capital framework. And the Treasury Secretary Bessent says that the post-2008 financial crisis and the regulatory framework that we all know as Dodd-Frank has become a threat to the banking model. I think that gave the banks a tailwind. Plus the fact that interest rates are generally lower on the short end and higher on the long end is beneficial for them. But we're also seeing some problems. J.P. Morgan lost a bunch of money with a subprime auto lender, and several other banks did as well. And then there's some deterioration in credit, as Jamie Dimon noted today. So we're watching this closely.
All right, and looks like Walmart had a big day, hitting a record high. It looks like you're at more than $5 at 107.21. Looks like Walmart also getting into to AI. So anything that AI touches seems to be a positive these days. Walmart, in fact, the Dow's biggest gainer today, thanks to a shopping partnership with OpenAI. What's your reaction to that news here today?
Well, this is exciting, and this is exactly what the bullish case is forecasting. Walmart didn't disclose the dollar amount of this deal with OpenAI, but they clearly have a broader artificial intelligence style strategy. They're going to provide a convenient future, they say, through an AI shopping assistant they call Sparky, and they've got other plans as well. So Walmart is benefiting, but we'll see a number of other companies doing the very same thing, and their profitability will likely rise.
Well, good thing they didn't call it Old Sparky. That was the nickname of the Florida electric chair, by the way. Having lived in that state, we used to hear about Old Sparky every so often. So, FYI. At this point, Gabriel Wisdom, any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, Frank, there's a shrinking supply of stocks, and it has a lot to do with how difficult it is to go public. There's a ton of regulations, and the accounting costs are enormous. So if you believe in supply and demand that drives the price of goods and labor is the same force that drives the value of stocks. And one area that I like here is the emerging markets. The slightly weaker U.S. dollar anyway, the stronger commodity demand that we're seeing, and then localized technological innovation have really helped support returns in some of the emerging market regions. So from a portfolio construction standpoint, I'd say international stocks provide some useful diversification, and in particular the emerging markets. These have gone through long cycles of outperformance relative to the U.S. markets. As you could look at the Vanguard Emerging Exchange Traded Fund and get a broad range of these plays. That's just one idea.
Very interesting. It looks like volatility is back after a relatively quiet summer. What are you doing? Anything with the VIX index, the volatility index, the Wall Street so-called fear index?
Well, we certainly look at it. Generally you want to be, as Warren Buffett likes to say, you want to be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. I'm not sure where we are in the mood cycle right now, but certainly today there's a good deal of fear. And again, back to that Yahoo Finance headline, absolutely a bubble on Wall Street is the headline, with a trader chewing bubble gum and blowing big bubbles. People are nervous.
A lot more bubble talk. You're absolutely right. Well, thanks for bringing that to our attention as well. Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management, based right here in Southern California, also author of Wisdom on Value Investing. It's always great to have you with us here, Gabriel. Thank you very much for taking the call here and covering all of the bases with us live on 790 KBC.
Thank you, Frank.
Out to the freeways now. Let's check that ride. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KBC. Mixed finish on Wall Street today with the Dow moving higher of 203 points, selling at 46,271, rebounding some more from Friday's washout, building on yesterday's gains, led by Walmart today. Walmart having a big day at more than $5 to 107 and change. Looks like Walmart has suddenly hit a record high in this AI deal. Looks like they're getting into it as well. The volatility index also spiked today, up 9% after that big jump on Friday. The S&P 500 slipped 10 points today in a volatile trading session to 6,644, and the NASDAQ down 173 points at 22,522. Once again, appears trade jitters buffeted the market today. The U.S. still digesting, the market's digesting the latest spat between the U.S. and China. Investors also taking in the latest third-quarter earnings from the Wall Street banking giants, including Goldman Sachs and JP Chase. We also heard from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell give a speech at an economic conference today. The Fed Chairman basically sticking to the script from what we heard before. At the NABE annual meeting, the Fed chair said the Fed's outlook for employment and inflation had not changed, implying that further Fed cuts, as previously signaled, are possible before the end of the year. The remarks coming today with a heavy focus on key reports stalled by the government as the government shutdown continues, and ultimately his comments appear to reinforce the market's view on coming rate cuts. Advanced Micro Devices is providing Oracle's cloud business with 50,000 AI chips. This is a move by NVIDIA's big rival, the latest in the latest series of AI deals. NVIDIA pulling back more than 4% on the day after rebounding yesterday. NVIDIA down more than $8 today, back to $180 and change. AMD up $1.67 at $218.09. Oracle pulling back more than $9 at $2.99. MU, Micron Technology, down nearly $6 at $187 and change. In the crypto world here, we see Bitcoin just shy of 113,000, Ethereum at 4,115, Solana at 201, and Doge at the moment at 20 cents. Oh yeah, gold still up there, near 4,200 an ounce right now at 4,176 and change. And silver is above $50 an ounce. Big front page news. Silver hitting blowing past the high last seen back in 1980. Now at $50, 43 cents an ounce. And now the latest news on 790 KABC.
Headed to SoFi Stadium? Ride the Culver City Bus Line 99, the SoFi Express. Just $2 base fare for a round trip from Westfield Culver City on weekend game days. We're hiring too. Learn more at culvercitybus.com or call 310-253-6500.
Bruin fans, fall is finally here. That means UCLA football is back in your life. Head out to the Rose Bowl to enjoy America's best tailgating and to make more unforgettable memories with the Bruins. Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are ready to make an impact this year, and we need you cheering them at the Rose Bowl. Visit UCLABruins.com or call 310-UCLA-WIN to lock in your tickets today. 310-UCLA-WIN.
Everyone knows the legend of D.B. Cooper, but what if I told you there's an even better story out there? One with multiple aircraft hijackings, prison escapes, and so many twists and turns. I'm talking about the hit podcast, American Skyjacker, which is now an action-packed documentary coming to theaters and streaming this fall. Find out more at www.americanskyjacker.com and listen to the bonus episode of the podcast on October 7th. American Skyjacker. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues here. 790 KABC. We've seen fire, and now we've seen rain. It's a nervous time in the fire-scarred areas of Malibu, Pacific Palisades, and Altadena. The area is impacted by the horrific firestorm in January. This October storm has brought drenching rain over the past nearly 24 hours. It's not quite done yet, it looks like. Quite a bit of rain has fallen. In fact, it looks like it's one of the wettest October days in Los Angeles in history. Let's bring in Rick Dickert now. Meteorologist Rick Dickert, of course, well-known here in the Los Angeles area from television and radio, including this program. His credentials also include aviation, surface weather observer. Rick Dickert, thank you very much for joining us live this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Frank. I'll tell you what, this weather system, because of the time of year that it moved through Southern California, significant, not unprecedented, but definitely unusual to get this amount of rain this early in our water year. We're talking mid-October. If this was mid-January into February, it would be a typical winter storm. But to have this type of rain, this intensity of precipitation this time of year is a bit unusual. Downtown LA through 3 p.m. this afternoon, 1.24 inches of rain, just shy of 1.25 inches. For the entire month of October, all 31 days, based on climatology, that's 30 years of record, we typically receive 0.58 inches. So in one day from one storm, we received over 2 times that amount. That's how significant this rainfall was.
Isn't that something? Did I see correctly? It's the wettest October day in Los Angeles since the 1930s, I believe. Is that correct?
That's right. 91 years. 1.72 inches fell back on October 17th of 1934. So this is the wettest October day since that date.
Isn't that something? Well, of course, this comes at a time when if the recovery, painfully slow recovery, continues in the Palisades, Malibu, and Altadena. What's ahead here in this storm, Rick Dickert, based on your assessments, and what potential might we see as far as mudslides and rock slides and so forth?
And that was the big concern, obviously, the recent burn scars above Altadena, above the Palisades area. Flash flood watches were in effect because of the concern with rock, mud, and debris flow. Once that hillside is scarred and you no longer have that vegetation to hold in the moisture, that's when you run into the problems. The good news is, so far, from what I've been able to find out from reports, storm reports from the National Weather Service, yes, we've had some wind damage, some run-of-the-mill flooding, urban flooding in intersections, but for the most part, it appears that we've made it through this weather system unscathed. Some significant wind observations, though, one which was clocked near Acton, just south of Acton, a 73-mile-per-hour wind gust. That's off of Highway 14, just north of the Santa Clarita Valley. A sustained wind of 74 miles an hour is hurricane force. And as I said, we're hearing of some trees down, including in the valley off the 101 freeway near Balboa. But the hillsides, for the most part, not hearing of any significant damage. That was the concern. Most of the watches and warnings related to this weather system, Frank, have been allowed to expire, except for some of those flood watches for the burn areas. That's because even though the significant precipitation may end, it could take a couple of hours to see the negative impacts of that rain before you get those negative impacts.
On the air live with meteorologist Rick Dickert, veteran meteorologist here in the Los Angeles area. Has this government shutdown impacted anything related to storm predictions, the National Weather Service, or any emergency prep efforts based on what you're seeing so far?
Absolutely not, at least on the National Weather Service side. Those hardworking women and men have kept their post, relating all that pertinent information, the life-saving watches and warnings that were in effect. All of the forecasts were on point, and it did not, thankfully. Good news is with this type of rain, this time of year, we talk about the fires, Frank, and this is the time of year we really start to get concerned because we're coming off of our long, dry summers. We have a Mediterranean climate, little or no precipitation during those summer months. And then we head into the Santa Ana wind season, which typically ramps up during mid to late October into November. You get those dry, hot offshore winds blowing from the land to the sea, just like what we saw in early January with the fire above the Palisades and the Eaton fire above Altadena. So this soaking rain did have some wonderful benefits to it. And also our snowpack, as of this morning, Mammoth 10 inches of fresh powder up there. So our water year, which starts on October 1st, off to a great start.
Any hidden danger out there, given the vast area of the burn areas, larger than Manhattan, in the Palisades in Malibu? That's the area that was burned horrifically in that windstorm in January. If you can imagine that, bigger than the area of Manhattan. And you remember the days when La Conchita had a similar situation, and the side of the mountain there got inundated with. It was quite some time after a storm that the side of the hill came down. Remember that toward the Santa Barbara area there. Are there any, given the fact that this area is so widely denuded, that there might be situations like that?
There's always that threat. Our first responders, the USGS, they will be watching those hillsides closely long after the precipitation ends. And we are now on the backside of this weather system. The cold front associated with this cool upper-level low-pressure system that swept off of the Pacific into Southern California has pushed off to the east. We're still going to have some lingering showers through the evening hours, but we're going to be back to our Southern California sunshine tomorrow. But the hillsides, yes, as you mentioned, Frank, we're going to have to keep a close eye on that because, as I mentioned earlier, there sometimes is a delay in what we see on those hillsides because those hillsides are scarred. When we say they're scarred, they've been all of that fire burned away the vegetation, the root system that would typically hold in a good soaking rain like we saw today. That's gone. There's nothing to hold that moisture into the hillside. That's when we get the problems with the rock, mud, and debris flow. So they will be watching those hillsides, those burn scars, and it's the recent burn scars. When we say recent, we mean just a few months back towards January when we saw those devastating fires. With each season, with each year, we get a little bit more regrowth. Those hillsides become a little bit more stable. That's not the case yet with Malibu, Palisades, Altadena, and so forth.
All right, I'm looking out right now at the window, and it looks like a tug of war underway between clouds and sunshine already here as the rain appears to be letting off here now. So it looks like we're in for a stretch of nice sunny weather after this. And any predictions on what this winter may look like? Any weather patterns like El Nino or La Nina or anything like that in the forecast this year?
Just prior to this storm moving into Southern California, the Climate Prediction Center updated the sea surface temperature analysis over the equatorial Pacific Ocean. And that's what we watch. We watch to see what those water temperatures are doing. And they've been trending cooler than average sea surface temperatures in that region of the Pacific create a La Nina condition. And usually, on average, not always, but usually La Nina conditions produce drier than average water years here in Southern California. Not the case. Mother Nature delivered us a good dose of precipitation. Again, the wettest day in downtown Los Angeles, where we keep our official records for the city of Los Angeles, just adjacent to Dodger Stadium, actually 1.24 inches. That total may rise before the end of the calendar day at midnight. Again, that was the wettest October day in the city since October 17th, 1934.
All right, that's fantastic. Well, appreciate it. It's always great to speak with you, Rick, with all of your great expertise. And looks like for business people, they can plan on some beautiful outdoor events in the days ahead once this rain completely comes to an end. Free air conditioning out there. It should be beautiful weather for the rooftop venues and sporting events and concerts and restaurants and so forth. So appreciate that very much, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that everything holds together here. Meteorologist Rick Dickert, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Frank.
Out to the freeways now, 790 KABC.
Headed to SoFi Stadium? Skip the traffic and ride the Culver City Bus Line 99, the SoFi Express, your direct $2 base fare round-trip ride from the Culver City Transit Center at Westfield, Culver City. Buses run on weekend game days every 20 minutes starting 3 hours before kickoff, with return service beginning at the start of the third quarter. And guess what else? We're hiring. Join our team and help keep the community moving. Visit culvercitybus.com or call 310-253-6500 for info on your next ride to the game or maybe your next job.
Hey, Bruin fans, want to go behind the scenes with your favorite teams and athletes? How about getting exclusive merch and opportunities to enter sweepstakes like sideline access at the Rose Bowl? Introducing Blue and Gold Society, UCLA Athletics fan membership program created to support Bruin student athletes. Members receive benefits like exclusive gear, videos featuring insider stories, and incredible experiences courtesy of UCLA Athletics. Sign up today at blueandgoldsociety.com.
Everyone knows the legend of D.B. Cooper, but what if I told you there's an even better story out there? One with multiple aircraft hijackings, prison escapes, and so many twists and turns. I'm talking about the hit podcast, American Skyjacker, which is now an action-packed documentary coming to theaters and streaming this fall. Find out more at www.americanskyjacker.com and listen to the bonus episode of the podcast on October 7th. American Skyjacker. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. The world continues to watch what's happening in the Middle East following this week's epic developments. Hostages released by Hamas. President Trump declaring an end to the war between Israel and Hamas more than 2 years after the Hamas terror attack on Israel back on October 7th, 2023. Following all of these epic developments closely, joining us live now is Middle East expert Lisa DAFTARI, editor of the Foreign Desk. Lisa, thank you very much for joining us here live this afternoon.
My pleasure. Great to be with you.
Fast-moving developments on a daily basis. Give us your reaction, of course, first of all, to what's happened in the last 24 hours or so.
Yeah, well, absolutely can't be understated what a day of celebration it was for Israelis and those who support freedom, and to watch these 20 hostages who are living be returned to their families. I mean, that joy cannot be understated by any means, but there's always a but. Obviously this is a 20-point plan that was brought forth by the United States under the supervision of Steve Witkoff, the envoy, and Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, and of course President Trump, who made the visit to Israel yesterday. Very, very, he got a hero's welcome. It was obviously a very historic moment. Does this have a potential to be a page-turner for the region? Absolutely. Will it be? We are not sure. We're not sure because we're dealing with Hamas. We're dealing with a terror entity that has not kept with its side of the deal, has not returned the bodies of the dead hostages, continues on its terror, now this time against Gazans, killing dissidents in Gaza over the last 24 hours. And of course, today, Donald Trump from Washington made the threat back to Hamas and said they have to disarm. Now, of course, for Israel, one of the priorities was to get the hostages, the living hostages back. But we cannot overlook the fact that if Hamas does not disarm and dismantle, who's to say there won't be another October 7th to come? So I think that's really what everyone is waiting to see. Obviously, we were happy to see this deal go through, but what does that really mean? Other than getting about 20 hostages back, will we see a disarmament and a dismantling of this terror organization?
What's the role of U.S. Forces in that region? Are there any troops in Gaza? And what's your reaction to the videos that are coming out? Hamas reported to be killing Gazans, executing people on the streets there.
Mm-hmm. And you don't hear anything about it. You actually don't hear much about anything anymore. All you heard about is that there was famine in Gaza that was caused by Israel. And you heard about that there was genocide in Gaza caused by Israel. And anytime there was Israel to blame or the United States to blame, you heard about it. But you don't hear about it when Hamas is killing the Gazans themselves, or you don't hear about it when Christians are being truly a genocide against Christians all throughout Africa and the Middle East. You just don't hear about it. So you also aren't hearing anything from the ceasefire now people who for 2 years stormed all sorts of cities around the world demanding a ceasefire. And now that we actually have a ceasefire, you're not hearing much global support for it or from the mainstream media. So it's disheartening to see that this is all just lip service and nothing more than that. No true support for the freedom-loving people of the Middle East, whether they be in Israel or in the West Bank in Gaza. So, we do hope that there will be more universal support for this. We saw under the first Trump administration the Abraham Accords, so we do know that the Arab world can live side by side with Israel if there is support for it. Now, the role that Qatar and Turkey and Egypt play in the next 5 years will be very important to see where these sort of frenemies, so to speak, stand on these issues. Will they push the other Arab countries and those who are supporting these terror entities to disarm and to move forward with modernity and to keep terrorism out of the region? Or will they play both sides, as they have often done, where they turn a blind eye to terrorism, or worse, fund terrorism, with states like Iran's regime or Qatar actually funding Hamas? And then trying to sit at the negotiating table with the West to fix the same issue that they caused. So, the arsonist and the firefighter, one and the same. So we have a lot to verify. And when I say we, I mean the United States. I think the Trump administration, particularly Donald Trump, he sold a vision to the Middle East and to the nations of the Middle East, particularly the moderate Arab states. And he did so very, very successfully in his first term and now again in his second. And we hope that this, not only that they follow through, but that the idea makes sense and translates into the second term. I know a lot has changed since October 7th. We've seen a shifting global narrative and a lot of propaganda regarding the Middle East. So we do hope that those who are fighting for freedom, whether it's the women of Iran or the freedom-loving Palestinians who are now being killed by Hamas, or those who have always vowed that freedom and coexistence comes first, living in Israel and all the other moderate Arab states, that all of their cries are heard and that the West can do whatever they can, whether it's under Donald Trump or any other leader, to make that a reality.
On the Live with Middle East expert Lisa DAFTARI, editor of the Foreign Desk, and going back to the epic news of yesterday, the images, unforgettable images of President Trump addressing the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, and then going on to Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh. Give us your thoughts about his message in Israel yesterday, and then the images that we saw, the signing ceremony there in Egypt.
Yeah, I think it was a good juxtaposition to say, this is what I proposed and this is how we're going to, we're going to turn the page and start on day one. The only issue was that Israel was not invited to that meeting. They did get a last-minute invite at the request of Donald Trump, and then was invited by Egypt, of course, because of the Jewish holiday. Israel did not send any representation, but that's what I would have liked to see, that there actually would be that next day to say the hostages are released. Now Israel and the moderate Arab states have a seat at the table, and we're going to start talking. But I do think it was important nonetheless that Donald Trump did make that trip, a very quick trip. This guy, I don't know what he lives off of. It's not just caffeine, but made a very, very quick trip to Israel, to Egypt, made his presence known, totally set the scene and the tone and the tenor for what he wants to see in the Middle East. And I think, frankly, most of those, Middle Eastern nations, that is what they want to see. They want prosperity. They want to see a day and age where terrorism is not the way forward. And I know that a lot of these Arab states have been dragging their feet. They didn't do anything for the Palestinian people. They didn't take in any Palestinian people. They were hesitant to help out. And Donald Trump put their feet to the fire. And he said, these are my ideas. If you have better ideas, bring them to the table. And if you don't, I hope you at least sit at the table. And that's exactly what we saw. So I do think that it was a successful trip, again, in setting the tone for what we hope to see in foreign policy, particularly with the Middle East. And we shall see how and if we can build upon this going forward.
Also absent, of course, Iran, right? Not participating in the Abraham Accords. What do you see ahead for Iran and the current regime there?
Yeah, the Iran regime is very, very tricky. It's a tricky situation. I know Donald Trump has been trying to, set a very positive tone to say that, we will make a deal, that they're very interested in negotiating and compromising. And I don't know if that's actually the case. We don't really use those words when we speak of this regime. They will thump their chests as much as they can. Look, the Iran regime is in a very precarious place right now, obviously after those setbacks with their military and nuclear apparatuses, after hits by Israel and United States joining in. Their economy is in a free fall because of very well placed and targeted sanctions by the United States and the West, and they don't really have much in terms of negotiating leverage. They know that the people of Iran will come out onto the streets at any given moment if there is more pressure on the people of Iran. And because of these various factors, they know that they are up against the wall. That being said, I do know that the Trump administration is more interested in getting rid of the Iran problem rather than pushing for regime change, and that's something that many opposition leaders here in the West have basically shown interest to the Trump administration, that they would work with him, whether it's the exiled prince of Iran and other his supporters and people who are wanting to see a better regime and a better day for the Iranian people. They don't.
Lisa DAFTARI, Middle East expert, editor of the authoritative Foreign Desk. Lisa, thank you very much for taking the call. We'll continue to follow your coverage as well as look for you at upcoming events here, conferences where you speak so eloquently on the Middle East issues. Lisa DAFTARI, editor of the Foreign Desk, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz, and I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon.
Headed to SoFi Stadium? Ride the Culver City Bus Line 99, the SoFi Express. Just $2 base fare for a round trip from Westfield, Culver City on weekend game days. We're hiring too. Learn more at culvercitybus.com or call 310-253-6500.